Thanks so much for joining me for the class project. I would love to see your editing before and afters. It's so fun to me to see kind of where your photo started and where it ended up and how you're going to use these techniques that I'm about to teach you in your workflow. So don't forget to share those in the project section here on Skillshare. So with that being said, let's jump into our first technique, which is inventing a background. That's what I like to call it. That's basically where if you accidentally shoot a photo tall and you end up needing it wide, like for a YouTube cover image or maybe a Facebook ad, something that's going to be a banner shape, you're going to either have to crop in really small on your image and not see the whole thing, or you're going to have to make up a background, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. So let's dive in. All right, so I am in Adobe Photoshop 2021, and my first example is this orange color flat lay. This is just an example photo I took in my color flat lay class, but as a flat lay, it's going to be a pretty good example for showing you how to apply this technique. So this picture is a 4x5 or 8x10 sized for tall for Instagram, which is what I typically do. But sometimes people want a square, so we are going to make this a square. Without cropping in, we want to crop out. So I'm going to drag my square crop box and then hit enter to accept. Right now I have these big white bars on the right and left of the image. So I am going to use the marquee tool, select those, right click, fill. This will bring up the fill menu. I have content set to content aware and I'm going to hit OK. This is just the basic fill, but I use it more often than not because it's simpler than the more advanced content aware fill, which we will talk about in just a minute. So that has already gone in and filled that. Command D, it looks amazing. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this on the other side. All right, Command D, there is our finished image, beautifully square. For any square applications, the same technique works if you need to do like a video thumbnail and you need it to be 16:9. We're just gonna change this to 16:9, stretch the crop box to include our entire image, and then go ahead and fill in those sides as well. Okay, I'm gonna show you the advanced content aware fill tool. So I'm going to select this whole thing, right click, and instead of going to fill, I'm going to go to content aware fill. This just brings up its own separate menu and you can get a really good idea of how it's going to fine tune. So what we can see on this left panel is our image and then there's a green mask. The green mask is just a representation of what in the image is going to be sampled for our fill. So if it's sampling some of the items in the frame, it might copy those there. And if you've ever used content aware fill in the past, you're probably very familiar with the fact that it kind of has its own mind and it will copy and paste random things in a way that's doesn't really make sense. If you haven't used content aware fill since Adobe Photoshop 2021, I highly recommend it because they have done amazing improvements to it. And I am just like, I barely have to touch these images. It's great. So anyway, we have our selection box and it is pulling. Our little preview gives us an example of what we're looking at. And I think that this content aware fill job looks awesome. One more thing before I hit OK, the output settings are by default set to output to a duplicate layer. This puts your changes on another layer. I think most people like that, but I don't like that. I want to output to the current layer because I don't want to have to merge it later. I'm going to merge it later. So Command D to deselect. That content aware fill did exactly what I would have wanted. And I'm going to select on this side, go into fill, content aware, and do the exact same thing. So whether you use the full dedicated menu or you trust the program to do it on default or auto mode, I think you can get great results either way. But this was a really easy example. You're probably looking at this like, yeah, it's easy to fill in a white background. Let's go into something a little more complex. So this image, I did these dipped salted almonds and we have it cropped to a square. If I wanted to give this image my tall treatment, I'm going to go into my crop box. We're going to go up to 4x5 or 8x10. And this one I could just crop in and the almonds would really fill the frame. But just for example's sake, we are going to make it have a lot more space around the edges. This is also nice because if you're creating content for Instagram, it's a good idea to make sure that your image fits within the square because the square is what's going to show up on the grid, even though the static post as it rolls in is going to fill the screen, if that makes sense. So if you plan to fill the screen and then when you get it posted on your feed, it'll be cropped into a square. So it's nice to just make sure that everything fits in the square. So we are going to go ahead and use the marquee tool again, select this area, right click, content aware fill. This one I'm a little worried it's gonna do some weird stuff on the top there because we've got some fun smudges. Man, it just does such a great job. I think it looks awesome. There's a weird little smudge happening right above this right-hand top almond, and I wanna figure out where that's coming from. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually brush into my mask. So right now it's set to negative, so if I click on something I don't want, it'll take it out, and then I can hit the Alt key. I can hold down the Alt or Option key to go back to positive. So right now I'm seeing this strange dark smudge. I'm gonna change the size by using the left bracket key, and then I'm gonna click around where that dark smudge is, and hopefully it'll sort of take it out or fade it in. There we go. Okay, that looks good. One thing to keep in mind, if you touch the edge of your selection box, it's going to produce a really harsh line in your final image. Let me zoom in so we can really see what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see it's not so harsh because you know, you wouldn't really know unless you were looking for it, but I do see a nice stripe right there that is not gonna work for my picture. So Command Z, I'm gonna undo where I touched the line and the rendering looks so much better. So I'm gonna hit accept, making sure I output to my current layer, okay, and that looks awesome. Command D to deselect. I'm gonna go back to the marquee tool, M. I'm gonna select the bottom and do the very same thing. Right click, content aware fill, double check my fill that it looks good, and super happy with it. Let's hit okay, and Command D for deselect. So here is how I would convert a square to a tall. Let's just take it all the way to a 16:9. Which works awesome for like a YouTube thumbnail. A lot of banner ads are this way. So we're gonna hit select. We have a much bigger space to work with. So marquee tool, let's go ahead and tackle this left-hand side. Right click, content aware fill, and see what we got. Okay, this is an awesome example of when it doesn't work out very well. So let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm looking at. This right-hand side has this really kind of blush smeary fill to it because we have one smear on our main image and it is just repeating that over and over. So I'm gonna come over here, change my brush size to make it smaller. I'm gonna take out that smear that naturally is in the main photo. And then hopefully that rendering will be, oh yeah, much cleaner. Perfect. I love that. Okay. I'm also going to give it a lot more sample space to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and select using the plus tool, a lot more of the white space in the image, because if it can sample from a bigger pool, it's going to be able to render a better looking image. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a lot more of this. And I check as I go because I don't want to spend more time doing more of these selections if I don't have to. So I like to just select quite a bit and then look over and see if the rendering did a good job or not. So let's take a look at that. Awesome. Okay, we're getting there, but I'm hoping to get a few more salt granules. So I'm just going to get even closer to some of these almonds so that I can incorporate the texture that the salt has. I feel like if that part of the picture existed, it would have a little bit of a salt trail in it just by nature of the sprinkling of the salt. So let's go ahead and give that a go and see how it looks. Okay, we do have a little bit of that salt texture. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust this little smear a little bit more. Okay, that looks good, but now I can see my stripe in there, so I'm just gonna make sure to grab more of that edge and fine tune it, get it just right. Okay, I'm happy with that. We're gonna hit okay, and then let's tackle the other side. Command D, M for marquee, select, right click. Actually, before I do this, Command D, look at this little crinkle in the paper. I'm just gonna grab my little spot heal brush and heal that away really quick because I know that's not gonna play very well with my clone stamp. So let's just block that out. I'll talk more about healing in the next section, but M for marquee, select, and jump right in. Speckling looks really, really nice, but the sides don't quite match up. I'm gonna apply one more content aware fill on this edge just to see if I can get it to smooth out really nicely. And I'm gonna have to remove that smear again. It loves that smear. It just wants to feature it throughout the whole photo. Awesome. Okay, Hit okay. I just feel like redoing that one. Sometimes I just kind of play with it. I do it again and again and just till I get it just right. But I love the way that this turned out, Command D. And if you didn't want this center anchor, obviously you can create a lot of fill on one side or the other. You can duplicate almonds to fill in the space as well. It gets a little harder because they are all different. And so it becomes obvious that you've copied it. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I feel like this would make a really effective cover image. So one quick example. So this is a picture that I shot vertical. Obviously, if you're going to be doing content for a lot of different applications, it makes sense to do vertical and horizontal just so you have a lot to work with. But I only shot this vertical for Instagram, and I had to do a content aware fill to get it to work for my cover photo for Skillshare, which is my concrete backdrops class. But nobody ever looks at an image like this and thinks, I wonder if she content aware filled that background. You know what I mean? I mean, now you might. Now you're going to question everything that you see that I do. But that's just like a practical example of how I use this technique a lot with what I do. And then the last time that I would invent a background is if my subject came too close to the edge. So this is an amazing picture of donuts, but the fact that the bottom donut just like almost touches the edge of that frame makes me so nervous. Like once I see that, I cannot unsee it. Basically, it creates a lot of tension for the viewer to have things too close to the edge without enough breathing room. And so for this image, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to get my little crop tool. I like to just clear out the crop that's in there and just go with the crop the images, but add a little bit of space at the bottom. Hit OK. And for marquee tool, I'm just going to grab the bottom strip of this image, content aware fill. This one is going to be a little trickier. I want to fine tune it really well because I have a lot of depth of field in this image. So I don't want it to sample any space that's significantly out of focus because it's going to look fake. I want everything to in that front strip to be the same level of focus as the surrounding area. So I'm just going to make this brush tool quite large, and I'm going to brush out any of the out of focus background and this donut. We don't need the frosting in there. Okay, that helped quite a bit. I still have a little smudgy, blurry spot right here in front. I'm going to see if I can figure out where it's sourcing that from. Maybe I'll take out even more of this just to see if I can get that to sharpen up a little bit. There we go. That looks good to me. I'm going to hit OK and we're going to take a closer look. Command D. So we do have these like denim looking textures, these weird stripes. And I'm just going to fix those with the patch tool, just kind of drawing them in, seeing if the patch tool can sort of natively make those look normal. I love that. Okay, that looks awesome. So now looking at the whole photo, you don't really bat an eye at that bottom edge. Nobody's looking at that, but giving your subject a lot of space around the edges really helps not have that little bit of tension between the image and the viewer, and it makes your photos more effective. So in the next section, we are going to talk all about the cloning and healing tools that I use throughout Photoshop.